Alright, I'm gonna make a video on. Here. I'm gonna make a video on certain things that are never taught to me, that I have to figure out, and certain things that are never explained. I don't think I think some books exist on it, but it's hard to find one. It's about um, this behavior I keep seeing with masculinity and femininity. I can't pronounce it, but it's about cars. So many people in the city, for some reason, they're obsessed with cars. They have to have the idea of someone who's feminine or someone who's a woman that can't stand cars. It destroys these types of people. Like, these people cannot. That idea or that thought is like they're completely against that. They don't think that's possible, and I'm like, why would that be? Because cars are a great thing. It's not about cars. It's about their ability to use their ability to spend money, or in many cases, mortgage money, to basically, I mean, like, it just doesn't make sense to me. Now the current Prime Minister of Canada is Mark Carney, so that just tells you. I mean, his middle name is Joseph, but that just tells you the Western world is obsessed with cars. Now, I don't know about all countries, but the United States and Canada, I mean, I can't say about all regions, but there's some obsession with cars to impress women. It just doesn't make sense to me because, like a car, I mean, apparently, like, the car was invented because it was a convenient way, you know, it saved time, it could do a lot of things, right? But nowadays it's just used for social status. It's all about me, 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 right? And I'm just like, it's not about school, it's not about uniform, it's not about, policies made by, a government official. It's not about any of these things. It's about social status, like, it's like, it's the shallow materialism. This is what it's about. It's about them, I don't know how any of these people were raised, but like, I did research. I was doing research earlier this morning on socionics, and there's a lot of very particularly a specific personality type called SEI and LSI. Just fancy words, fancy letter combinations, but like, I mean, it might seem like I'm ranting, but like, there's a huge difference. When you pick a society, I don't care, like, deviation of reincarnation or New Age you subtract, but when you come up with the idea of a society, um, you have to pay attention to, like, for example, not every society that has cars or equivalent modes of transportation will have that type of behavior. Some societies might look very similar on the map, but might have the same country as if it's alternate Earths, but you know, but you're just not going to see, these types of people. Hey, this type of behavior is exclusive to our planet and our time period after, say, 1990, right, or 1980, right? You're not gonna see people flaunting on cars in other societies. Now I'm like, wait, alternate Earths? That's like science fiction astronomy, right? No, that's correct, but you know, and I'm like, well, yeah, you couldn't be taught these things elsewhere. There are other places that you can learn these things, but a society that flaunts on cars, it's obvious what would happen. You know, First of all, you know, I've driven cars before, and you know, you can get to a grocery store in less than 10 minutes in most cases, right? But um, it's just that with cars, like, you have all these, you know, You can control, like, how you brake the car, for example, right? Brake is in BRAKE, right? There's a bunch of things you can do, right? Anyone who's knowledgeable about cars would know, the social, like, what types of people drive which, right? You get the point. But, a society that has this type of investment on it, you can call it hazing, or you can call it initiation, all you want. But a society that obsesses over it, and to what it just described in the last few minutes. First of all, it values certain things, but not others, right? I'm not too familiar with, New Age religion. I did a lot of research, but it's not nearly as extensive. Some people are much more knowledgeable and understanding with the subject than I am. So I might not be able to really adequately describe. I'm certain if you find someone who understands the subject thorough depth, but a society like that will obsess over appearance to almost absurd extent, and that includes this. And I'm like, oh well, alternate Earths you'll find that too, but not quite. I think I personally think that that's not the case, and I'm not sure why that is. But I'm sure I've had a few dreams. I've done a few regressions, right? I have a very mild out of body experience, which is not the ones that not described, but the internet describes this process. I have not read any of those, so I haven't done the ones in depth. But I don't see this type of behavior, in these other worlds or other alternatives. I really don't see those things. Now, I don't know what comic books are like, but they're just instructions from the. So you won't see this. It will be a little difficult. But the point is, you don't see this type of behavior for some reason. And I'm not sure why that is. I haven't done nearly enough research on history, so I can't really explain have no explanation on how or why this occurred. But this is an observation I made. Now, I took some courses in science economics, and I genuinely, and maybe psychology, maybe a tiny amount of psychology, not that much, of that. I think it's because the behavior was not punished, or that's not the correct word. Psychology does not call it a punishment in that case, but there's a chapter on it. It's called conditioning or something like that. But I couldn't remember the details to explain it. But basically, this behavior was not discouraged throughout the last 50 years. And because it was not discouraged, it was increased. This increased in many countries. Not all, but in many countries. I can't say which one specifically, other than the United States and Canada, but I could say that it is certainly a behavior that increased during our times. Now, this is not entirely the worst thing, but when I browse, every time sometimes it occurs by dreams, at night, but I get the sense that in other societies, including alternate Earths, it's very different. I didn't explore every part of it. I'm sure no amount of fiction literature or, stuff that you can watch a DVD or a VHS on will be ample enough. But you get the sense that it's very different. First of all, there's certain things that are taken to extreme, and almost like a world record, and I can't figure out what it is. But I think it's because I think it is correlated with what I observe about the cars thing, right? Is that for some reason, a lot of people it's like a video I made on earlier sometime earlier video I uploaded where I mentioned Steve Jobs. Well, first of all, it's more like, if someone gets personally offended, they are very reluctant to, they'll just take it in, right? And they'll never tell you, they're not gonna tell you that you offended them or this or that, right? It's because of the society we live in with the cars. First of all, it's not just cars. Obviously it's more than that. But cars is just a tool, right? It's an invention that's made. Invention that's made is very convenient. I've seen cars in the alternate Earths, regardless if it's a dream or whatever. And I almost get an atmosphere that has a lot less pressure, despite the same inventions, and you see the same things. You see airports, train stations, if it's the time period is closer to our time period. I'm thinking, why is the atmosphere so different? It's a lot. I don't know why that'd be. It could be that the wars are the history of the wars are different, but there could be longer periods of peace. I can't tell what it is, but it's very different, despite it being the same freaking Earth, right? I'm not. I mean, like, it's a different parallel universe, sure, but and you still say you might have the same countries. Maybe some of the countries have slightly different names. You still got the Americans in one or two. I'm like, why is it still? I can't understand that. And I'm not sure why that is. This is a new subject for me. It's a very subjective field, I guess, or land. Field land, right? It's just like, this is truly something. I can't figure it out. I suppose something that happened earlier in this our timeline, this planet Earth 1, Earth 1, Earth 0. I'm gonna call it Earth 1 for now. Because I only know one Earth. Something happened earlier. I'm like, well, let's see. Let's look at some obvious things that we learned in world history. We learned there was World War II. There was World War One. There was, space exploration. There was Korean War. There was Vietnam War. That's why I learned in history class, right? And I'm like, perhaps one of these 5 events I listed was significant, and that was more significant than the others. And then, of course, the inventions, right? The internet was invented, and so was, advancements in automobile technology, and so was a bunch of other things that led to, very advanced things like, I'm not going to list all of it. So, to conclude this video, that, I don't see the same type of, extremism in this type of, I don't know what it is. It's not MGTOW, by the way. It's not that. I don't know. Maybe, like, learning about, I don't see that on the alternatives. I'm like, oh, I didn't visit that many countries, so I didn't get an adequate sample size. No, that's not it. It is very different in the alternatives. I would imagine the population might be much different. Like, Earth's population, this Earth 1 is up to 7 to 8 billion. It's possible in some of the alternate Earths, and that includes the ones that are in a similar time period that we are in with all the computers and stuff. I would imagine total population, much lower in some cases. It's probably less than 1 billion. I can't say for certain, but that would make a lot of sense. And I'm like, see, that's the thing. I'm working on my imagination here, and that is intriguing. The idea of a planet of the same size, but for some reason the history of it is so different that it's less than 1 billion. The total population is less than 1 billion. I'm like, that might be. I'm like, well, let's imagine what would be the repercussions here. First of all, if the land is the exact same, then that would, or for most part, then that would mean that there's a lot of land that is uninhabited. So rather than having every continent filled except Antarctica and Greenland, you'll have Antarctica, Greenland, and perhaps one more continent that's practically uninhabited. That means that you can have, say, a group of 10,000 people, not like all at the same time, but you can have those people visit the uninhabited continent, whatever it might be, and just live life if they want it. You don't get this option now. I mean, unless you wanted to, go to Antarctica and test yourself with the elements, which something most people won't do, which makes sense. But to do that in, say, a different continent, where regardless if it's Australia or South America or Africa or North America, whatever the history of that alternate Earth is, and I think it makes a huge difference in many ways. But just because we live in the modern times, it doesn't mean that much of the horrid things that people have done in the past, like for example, in the Columbus era, people wanted to explore westward, right? This is not, people want to still do that today, but of course they know that can't happen, so it causes a bunch of other problems that are hard to explain, right? It's something I learned that I did not understand when I was younger. And it makes sense. Like, let's say you have an alternate Earth that's just the same size as us, maybe a few slight differences. Land and certain continents perhaps have like a glacier problem or something that causes some of the land to erode. But let's see. But just imagine if one of the 5 continents that we know today didn't have any, practically doesn't have any people, right? That's a great thing for hobbyists, right? But that can't happen today, right? So that's terrible, in many ways. But people. But the thing is, a lot of these people that I described earlier in this video can't see that problem. Which is amazing because there really isn't a solution for it, but they can't see that problem, right? I mean, there is really no solution for that, but the solution will come. It's just not in a way that's pleasant. For a solution to be pleasant, or first of all, that's the thing. I mean, I would certainly not mind that idea. Like, have a globe, right? And let's say one of the continents was empty, right? Let's say it's Africa or South America or Australia, right? Let's say the total population in that continent is less than 100,000, right? Or less than 10,000, right? Which means it's virtually a wilderness, right? That's, let's say the other continents have, this alternate Earth 2, which does exist, but you have to be born there and be a baby again, right? For all those old men out there, old women out there, you have to remember that death does occur. That includes the middle-aged folk, but, that's the thing. I haven't explored too much of this, other realms, but that's something that a lot of people don't recognize. They think that they are superior, or they're condescending. Condescending, right? It means they think that they're better than other people, right? But they can't recognize that they too have this problem, right? And that it's just that there were people in earlier history that tried to venture to these unknown continent. And last time planet Earth and this Earth one had something like this was perhaps like 700 years ago, roughly, right? So there were a few that traveled to these continents that have much lower populations in comparison to today. I'm sure a lot of them got killed, right? But and I'm sure a lot of them managed to blend in with the locals, if they did not return, right? And I'm like, this is the same tendency for people to have today. People have an urge to do things like this, right? It is something that people will deny over and over again, but this is correct, right? This is hard for me to explain, but this is true. People want to do things like this, right? And I'm like, the reason is hard to explain. I haven't found any book that explain this at all, but I found a lot of books that somehow feed the emotions of what I call the die religion, but I have already explained that in a different video, and I refuse to, because otherwise